Today's daf is Kuf Yud Aleph 111, and we're at the bottom of Kuf Yud Amud Base 110b. Towards the bottom, we're still in the conversations regarding zugas, drinking two of something, so that it would count as a pair, a breach in connection to the oneness of Hashem and the powers of shadim that can damage a person. And then we're going to get into more danger of shadim and other things that could be dangerous to a person. As we mentioned yesterday, these don't show up in halacha as things that we are concerned about. But nevertheless, it's here in the Gemara. We're going to go through them and try and see at least what we can understand from them. So we're about 10 lines from the bottom of Kuf Yud Amud Base 110b, where Rabbi Tzvi said that two wine and one beer don't combine, and therefore it's considered that you had zugos two wine. However, if you had two beer and one wine, they do combine. And he said the siman, the comparison for that, and the analogy is a halacha in regards to tumah. This is an interesting halacha, that we have a reed mat. There are different types of reed mats, how they would be made, and depending on how they're made, the thicker, stronger one, 5 tefachim by 5 tefachim square, is enough of a mat to count as a vessel receptive to tumah. And however, a more flimsy, smaller, a thinner, actually, a reed mat, that would require 6 tefachim to be susceptible to tumah. So what happens if you have a 4 tefach of the thicker, stronger mat, and then 1 tefach of the smaller mat, of the thinner mat? That's not going to be enough to say you have 5 tefachim. However, the reverse, if you have 5 tefachim of the smaller mat, of the thinner mat, and then 1 of the thicker, since the thicker one is stronger and more susceptible to tumah, meaning even a smaller amount is susceptible to tumah, for sure it'll join in and combine. And similarly over here, in regards to the wine and beer, wine is a greater drink, so it won't combine to 2 beer, but 1 beer being a lesser drink won't combine to 2 wine, but wine being a better drink will for sure combine. It's even more of a drink than the 2 beer, and they'll combine. So zeh klal, this is the rule. As long as what's attached to it, as a ring or border, is going to be a more strict type of material, where even less of it is susceptible to tumah, so then it's susceptible to tumah. But if what's attached to it is a lesser something that's of a lesser degree of tumah, it won't combine. So too here in regard to the beer. Now, what about drinks that are a part of the meal combining with drinks that are before or after a meal? So Amar Nachman Amar Rav. So Nachman said in the name of Rav, Trei Kama Taka V'chad Ataka Mitztarfi. If you had 2 drinks prior to the meal as a part of the cocktails prior to the meal, and then 1 during the meal, so they combine. Chad mikame taka, terei ataka. However, if you had 1 prior to the meal and 2 during the meal, limit starfin, they will not combine. And this is the idea that it's considered 2 during the meal, and so the 1 before won't combine. Maskif lar mashasha atu anan letkuni taka kabiina letkuni gavra kabiina. Says, who cares about what he did during the meal? We're not trying to fix the meal. We're trying to fix the person. The person here is attached to 2, so we have to fix that. But gavra kamiskin, and he's had 3 drinks, so who cares? Rather, what they're saying is that if you had two during the meal and one after the meal, that doesn't combine. And the way they would define the after the meal was by removing the table. You mentioned this earlier, that they had sort of like tray tables for each person, and the removal of that table signified the end of the meal. And so if somebody had two drinks during the table, meaning during the meal, and one after the table was removed, meaning after the meal, that doesn't combine. Okay, he might say the Rabbi Bar Nachmani, like the occurrence of Rabbi Bar Nachmani, where he had two and realized after they removed the table, he had them bring back his tray table and then had another drink with the table there, because without the return of the table, that would not have counted as a valid third drink. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel, Kol HaMazug Mitztarif. So any diluted drink is going to count. Chutz min hamayim, besides for water that's diluted. I think Gemara is going to say, what do you mean water diluted? With what? With water? So Gemara is going to explain. Rabbi Yochanan afilu mayim, and Rabbi Yochanan says even water diluted is going to count as a diluted drink, and then it would combine so if you had one diluted wine and one diluted whiskey and one diluted water, that would combine according to Rabbi Yochanan. So Rav Papa explains, what this means is you put hot water into cold water, or karir chamimi, where you put cold water into hot water. So that's a dilution where you pour cold into hot or hot into cold. Kariri, but if you pour hot water into hot water or cold water into cold water, that doesn't count diluted. It's just more of the same, and that would not combine. Right. So that's the end of zugas, of the two drinks for now. And we move into other forms of danger coming from shadim. So Amar Reish Lakish, so Reish Lakish says, Arid Varma Isa Isin Dama Bereshi. These four things, if somebody does them, they're taking their own blood upon their own head, meaning they're taking their life in putting their life in danger and taking it on their own responsibility. And therefore they really are held liable for their own soul. And these are them. Hanifne bein dekalakosel. Somebody who relieves himself, meaning he uses a bathroom, but not bathroom, who relieves himself outside between a palm tree and a fence, a wall. So as you will see throughout the stuff, palm trees seem to be an attractive place for shadim. And the idea of palm trees comes up a lot in regards to negative kedusha, if you would call it. So, anifne bein dekalakos, so somebody who relieves himself between a palm tree and a wall. Va'ever bein shnei dekalim, and somebody who walks between two palm trees. Va'ashes hamayim she'ulim, and somebody who drinks water that is borrowed, meaning he asked for water. And somebody who crosses over water that had been spilled out. So these four are going to be dangerous. And even if it's his wife who poured that water out, it's going to be dangerous for him to walk over it. So, even if it was done before of, even if she poured it out in front of him, nevertheless, that's going to be dangerous. So the Gemara now analyzes. Hanifne bein dekel said, somebody who relieves himself, goes to the bathroom between a wall and between a palm tree and a wall. That's only if the space between the palm tree and the wall is less than 4 amos, about 6 feet. But if he does have 4 amos there, so less than one, it's not a problem because he can walk through there without disturbing the shadim. And even if it's narrower than 4 amos, that's only if there isn't another side, another way for the shadim to move away, so he can walk through there and not disturb the shadim. But if there's another area that the shadim can hang out in, no problem. Now the next part said, if he walks between two palm trees, that's only if there's no public way between those trees. But if there's a public way between the two trees, so that breaks up the connection between the trees, and it's not going to be a problem. Next part, if somebody drinks borrowed water, that's only if it was borrowed by a child. But with an adult, there's no problem. And also, if a child borrowed it, it's only if it was borrowed in the field, because there's no other water, and so the shadim may be hovering around that water. But in the city, there's plenty of other water. No problem. And even in the field, it's only with the water. But if you borrow beer, wine, etc., no problem. The next statement of Reish Lakish was Va'aver bein mayim shfuchim al mayim shfuchim, somebody who walks over water that had been poured out. So Layamran, and this generally was wastewater that was a byproduct of whether it's cooking or cleaning. So that's the kind of water we're talking about, the dirty wastewater that would pour out. So Layamran al sekina afra. That's only if you didn't pour some dirt over it, which would sort of cover it. Also, or he didn't spit into it. But if he had poured some dirt over it to cover it, or spit into it, then there's no problem. Also, it has to be that the sun didn't set on it, meaning it was all at night. But if it was during the day, so then the sun was on it and it's no problem. And as well, and also that 60 steps had not crossed over it. But once 60 steps had crossed over it, it's also not a problem. And this is a number that we find a lot in regards to Shadim, this idea of 60. 60 is a number of shadim and number of steps to undo the shadim, etc. But if it is 60 if 60 steps were stepped over this water, or the sun had had been over it, it's going to be okay. And this is also, you can't cross this if you are walking over it and you're not riding a donkey. And even if you're walking but you're not wearing shoes, so you're barefoot. But if you're riding a donkey, or if you're wearing shoes, there's no issue. So if you're not walking barefoot, don't worry about crossing spilt water. But all this is if the only concern you have is the shadim. But if you're also concerned about kishuf, black magic, but if there is also concern of black magic, even if you're on a donkey with shoes on, the sun had been over the water, etc., and still there's going to be a problem. Chashina, kahu gavra, like this fellow, the Rachav Chamra Masani, who was riding a donkey and wearing shoes, the Gamid Nisane, and when he crossed over the water, his shoes shriveled up, with Tzavikare, and his leg went limp. Okay, so don't hang out where there's black magic being played on your shoes, on the water that's spilt out. So now the Gemara is going to go into another concern regarding black magic, where if you walk between two of the same thing, and the Gemara is going to elaborate on that, or if one of them walk between you and someone you're walking with, or you're talking with, so that would be effective and hurt a person because of black magic. So Tanawan. Shlosha ein mamatzin ve'ein mismatzin. There are three that you don't walk between them, and they shouldn't walk between you and someone else. Ve'elahin hakelav. The dog could be an agent of black magic. Va'dekel, or a palm tree, back to palm trees. Va'isha, or the woman could be a sorceress. And so a woman, don't walk between two women, or don't have a woman walk between you and whoever you're walking with. Some say also a pig. Some say also a snake. Now the imamatzin might account, and if it did, so what do you how do you undo the damage you're trying to do? Amar Rav Papa says niftach bekel v'nafsik bekel. Say verses that the sequence of psukim begins with the word kel. El being might, but it's talking about Hashem, so the might of Hashem, and it ends with the might of Hashem. And the Rashbam here gives a suggestion of these psukim. This is at the end of in Bamidbar 23 verses 22 and 23, which starts with Hashem who took him out. Kel hamotzim Mitzrayim. Hashem who takes him out of Mitzrayim, and says that there is Kila Nachash Yaakov. Hashem takes them out of Mitzrayim, and that there is no sorcery or no nachash, which is a type of what's it called when somebody tells future and reads cards, etc. So there's none of that, but in Yaakov. I'm having a blank. What's it called when somebody reads cards and would be your
fortune teller?
Fortune teller, but
tarot cards.
Yeah. So the cards are the tarot cards, and what would we call somebody who does those? They are your personal.
Yeah, fortune teller.
No, tarot reader is the other term.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking of another term.
A psychic.
Psychic. Thank you very much.
Psychic as opposed to sidekick.
Yeah, not a sidekick, a psychic. Yes. So, Kilo Nachash B'Yaakov. There's no, psychics or psychicatry in Yaakov. So these psukim end with the might of Hashem and that which Hashem does. So you start with Kel and end with Kel, and in it is the statement of our connection directly with Hashem, and that there's no sorcery in Yaakov. So this idea of splitting between two is undone by saying that we are enveloped by Hashem on one side, Hashem on the other side, and no sorcery in the middle. Or additionally, you could say the psukim inami niftach beloy v'nafsik beloy. Start with the verse loy ish kel v'chazev, that the Almighty is not a human who would give falsehood, and this is in those psukim as well, and until the end of the pasuk, which says v'lo yakimenu, and Hashem doesn't lie, meaning make a statement and not uphold it. Again, that we are connected directly with Hashem, and we're enveloped by the not being connected to humans who try to manipulate. So this is the idea, really, of anytime a person senses a danger, whether it's black magic or other forms of fear or personal threat. The idea of connecting to the oneness of Hashem, and that we ourselves have that ability to connect, and so we have the need to remind ourselves of oneness of Hashem. Traditionally, what we say is "Ein od milvado." There's no one but Hashem. Ein od milvado. There is only one connection that is real, and that is our connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with the divine, and that there is only one power, Hashem. Hani beit trei, the matzilu ishamina. So the Gemara says that if there were two people walking and a woman who's menstruating walks by, so if it's the beginning of the menstrual cycle, would kill one of them. If it's the end of the cycle, Meriva was the end of the flow, really. So Meriva is a big name. So then she causes them to have a fight. And how do they fix this? Again, nafsik b'kel v'nafsik b'kel. Say there's verses that begin with kel and end with kel, connect with the oneness of Hashem. If you see two women sitting at a fork in the road and they're on either side of the street, each one on one side of the street, they're facing each other. You know they're up to no good. They're playing some black magic. So how do you fix it? So first of all, if you have an alternative, don't use that street. Go around. If there's no other way and you have to walk by the if you're with other people, hold their hand and walk by. And then you can pass by without any problem. If there's no one else, say this. And these are names of Shadim. These names, Miskatla, Bechek, Kabel, they died already, or were killed already with bow and arrow, with arrows that hit them. Haiman, and so that, and then you're safe. The Haiman the Paga beitza beiden asakas mitvilas mitzvah. Now, once we're talking about these ideas of meeting women, the Gemara brings us something that's not related. It's just related to privacy and to modesty. So if somebody meets a woman as she's coming out of the water where she had gone to the local river for a mikvah, and she's coming out, and so there's a lack of modesty that he encountered her there. It's not her fault, but that he encountered her there. So this can bring upon him a spirit of harlotry. So if he goes home and he has relations, so going to come upon him harlotry. But if she went home and had relations first, having met someone else other than her husband, a spirit of harlotry will come on her. So So what is the fix for that? You should say like this. It's a pasuk, shofech buz al nadivim. You pour shame upon those that are gift themselves of themselves, and make him get confused in a path that's not a path. So this way you can get this spirit of what this encounter off. Rabbi Yitzchak says, what is the meaning of this verse that it says, Gam ki elech begeitzal maves lo ira ra ki atam yodi? Also, when I go in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil because you're with me. So what is this shadow of death? One who sleeps in a shadow of a single palm tree. And the shadow of a single palm tree is dangerous because of Shadim. And if somebody's connected to Hashem, because you're with me, I'm not afraid of the shadow of death. But this would be the shadow of death. Or somebody is sleeps in the shadow, in the shade of the moon. So now the Gemara says, this is what we said about a single palm tree. It's only that it's so far from the next palm tree that its shadow does not hit the other tree. But if there's the shadow of one tree on a palm tree on this one, there's no problem. What about this brisa that says that somebody sleeps in the shadow of a palm tree alone in a courtyard? And somebody who who sleeps in the shadow of the moon, then he's taking his life in his own hands. Hechidami, what's that scenario? If it's a single tree, that there's no other palm tree next to it, whose shade folds upon it. That's even outside in the field. But in a courtyard, even if there's another palm tree that's nearby whose shadow falls on it, it's also going to be dangerous to sleep there. Shmamina. Now the Bryce had said, also in the shadow of the moon. What is that? That's only on the west side. That means that it's the end of the month when the moon is on the east, and then when he's sleeping near the wall of the west side, he's going to be in the west side of the wall. He's going to be in the shadow of the moon. But if he's Aval b'Medincha, but if it's the beginning of the month where the moon is on shining from the west side, and so it's on the east side, there's no problem sleeping near the western or the eastern wall. Change the Gemara. We turn to Kufiyot Aleph, and the Gemara is going to tell us some more dangers of palm trees. Haiman the Mefni Agirda Didikli, somebody who uses the bathroom, all right, who relieves themselves on a stump of a cut down palm tree. Then a spirit of either paralysis or that he has bruises will come upon him. Somebody who leans his head on a stump of a cut down palm tree. It's going to get a headache, bad headache. Haiman, the Pasya Dikla, someone who steps over a palm tree. Imiktil katil, if it had been chopped down, so then he will be cut down and die and be killed. But if it had just fallen over and on its own, so he too will fall over and die. And this is only true, but he didn't put his thigh on it, didn't step on it. But if he did step on it and put his thigh on it, but then there's no problem. Now the Gemara says that there are 5 shadows or 5 shades of a tree that are dangerous in the same way. Chamishim tuli. So there are 5 shades from trees that are dangerous. Tula dedikla yechida, a single palm tree, the shadow. Tula dekanda, the kanda tree shade. Tula de parcha, the caper tree shade. Tula de zardasa, the tree of the zardasa tree, the shade. Ikadamri aftula de arba, some say also a boat shade. The tula de arvasa, and of a willow, and the shade of a willow. Lola de milsa. And this is the rule. Call the nafish anfe, anything that has a very large branches or a canopy. Kashi tule, then the shade is dangerous. Also, the kashi silove, and also if it's a very hard wood, kashi tule. So then the shade is going to be dangerous. Lebar mikrumasha. Besides for this tree called krumasha, alfagav the kashi silove, even though that the wood is hard, loy kashi tule, its shade is not dangerous. The amra la shade lebra, as it was heard that a certain shade told her son, pirchi nafshech mikrumasha, take your soul away, fly your soul away from krumasha, the iuhu de katel avuch me katel lidide, because it killed your father and it'll kill you. Amar Ravashi Chazina of Kahana the Parish Makula Tuli. We saw that Rav Ashi would run away from any. He would avoid shade of any trees. Okay, sorry, of Kahana, which avoided any trees. Now the Gemara is going to go through names of these shade. So Bei Parchi, the ones that are near the caper tree, their name is Ruchi, spirits. Bei Zardasa, the ones that are by the Zardasa tree, Sheda, they're called Shedim. Bei Igra, the ones that are on the roofs of houses, Rishvi, those are called Rishvi. So what difference does it make what their names are? L'kamea, you're going to write an amulet to protect from them, so you have to know their names. The Bei Perchi, from the caper tree, the ones that hang out at the caper tree, Birya Sheilanai, they don't have eyes, they can't see. L'may nafkamina, what difference does that make? L'gezuze, to run away from them, and l'gezuze to run away from them, because they can't see where you're going. Once there was a young student, a rabbi, that needed the bathroom and went near the caper tree, and Shama the Kasi elevate, and he heard the shadim coming towards him. V'gazila, so he moved around. Yeah, Eric, you don't know that. And so he the Gazila, and he ran away and hid. Ki azla chavke ladikla, when as he went, the shade bumped into the palm tree. Tzavach, the palm tree shriveled. Tzavach dikla upakahi, and the shade died. He percha that the Bei Zardasa. So the percha the Bei Zardasa. So these shadim, or these groups that are the shadim that are around the tree Zardasa. Shady, their names are shady. Hazardasa, the smicha lamasa. So if it's a zardas, a tree that's near the city, loy pachta mishitin sheda, there is no less than 60 shedim. L'may nafkamina, l'michtav lekemeya, in order to write a kameya about it. So Gemara tells a story. Ahubak masa, there was a either a tax collector or a police officer. It's unclear exactly what this kasha is, but it's some sort of official of the city. The Azil B'Koyi Gabi Zardasa, he was hanging out near this Zardasa tree, that was near the city. Allah Beshitin Sheda. So there were 60 Shedim that came upon him. Vistakin, it became dangerous. Asalahum Rabbana the Liyada the Zardasa Shitin Sheda. So he came to a certain young rabbi who didn't know that such a type of zardas, a tree, would have 60 shadim. So he wrote a kameya for a single individual shade. So he heard that they hung on the tree that they were hanging out at. They hung a bell, and they were playing music and singing the kamashri hachi, and this is the song they sang. Sudre de marakitzuba marabana. He's got himself a nice head. A head kerchief like those of the rabbis. He thinks of himself as a rabbi, dresses like one, right? However, bedikne, that's what he has. Bedikne be bamar. However, we checked out this teacher, but he doesn't even know how to say the blessing on the head kerchief that he has. So they were mocking this rabbi that he doesn't even know how to say a bracha on the head covering that he has, and so somehow the head covering is connected to the shadim, and they were mocking him for that. Asa Umer Abana, the other desire the Sashitin Shady Hava. So another Rav who did know that there were 60 shadim that came. Now because of the Kameya, the Shitin Shady, and he wrote the Kameya that has 60 shade for 60 shadim. Shamada ka'amru panu minaychu mehacha. And he said, all right, it's time for us to leave. The shadim said it's time for us to leave because the kameh had been written. Ketev Meriri. So there's a term Ketev Meriri for names of shadim. Tractate Pesachim. There are two of them. Chad mikamet tira, v'chad mibasar tira. One in the morning and one in the afternoon. And so there are different shadim at different times. The mikamet tira Ketev Meriri shemay. The ones in the morning, their name is Ketev Meriri. Umerse beikada de kimka, and they are found between the barrels of kutach. Now, kutach is that really sour, terrible dip made of moldy bread and sour milk, etc. So between those barrels, where you find them in the morning, and they dance upon the ladles that serve it, whatever that means. The basar tira, the ones in the afternoon, ketev yashud tzarayim shema. Their name is the ketev of yashud tzarayim, and which means afternoon. And umersi bekarna de ezia, and they are found dancing between the horns of the horns of goats. V'hada bekanafia. And they dance around it like on a sifter. All right. Abaye have a shakav azil, v'azil a papa miyimine v'hader Rav Huna b'reder Yeshua mismali. Abaye was walking with Rav Papa to his right and Rav Huna, the son of Rabbi Yeshua, to his left. Chazilu ketev mariri the ka'aselape the smali. He saw that there was a ketev mariri coming towards his left, where Rabbi Yeshua. Where Rav Huna, the son of Rabbi Yeshua, was. So he swapped them out and put Rav Papa to his left. Well, Rav Huna, Rabbi Yeshua, and Rav Huna, the son of Rabbi Yeshua, to his right. Amalei Rav Papa. So Rav Papa said, "What? You don't care about my life? So you're moving me to the left and moving him away?" Amalei ad shaita kai maslach. He said, "No, you. I saw that you're safe today. You're doing well. Why? Because he was wealthy and he was doing well, and that was indicative of his being in a good place, and so he was not afraid for him. Michad beTammuz ad Shitzer Bey vade Shchichi. From the 1st of Tammuz until the 16th, they are always found. However, mikan ve'elech safik shechichi safik le'shechichi. But from the 15th of Tammuz on, and the 16th of Tammuz on, it's not clear whether they were found or not. And you can find them in again in the shadow of some type of grasses that had not grown a full amma. Ubetuli the tzafra, or in the shade of the morning and evening, so the early morning and late evening. Opanya, delay have a garmida if the shade is less than a amma. The ikar betule basically, but the main part that where you find them is in the shadow of the bathroom. You will see that throughout this, a lot of human waste is a part of these this danger. And the idea, again, Eric is busy with whether the Rambam likes this or not, but the Gemara's idea over here, if you take them, take all this literally, you're in danger, like Eric taking these literally and is in danger. But the obviously these are deeper ideas and metaphors, and tell us about certain aspects of connecting with Hashem and elevating our physical body to the purity of the oneness, connecting with the oneness of Hashem, and the antithesis of that is waste, that which is destroyed, broken down, and darkness. Amar Rav Yosef Hanitlas Mili Yohiv Arbona Lenahara. So these three things bring a person to lose their light, meaning their eyesight. We talked about that the eyesight is often referred to as light. So So man the sarek reshe yavish, somebody who combs his hair when his head is dry. Uman the shasi tif, and somebody who drinks the wine that drips out of a barrel, so that drip is waste. Uman the sayim misane adamaisine kari. Somebody puts on his shoes when his feet are still wet. So these are dangerous for eyesight. Somebody who has talai, which is that they hang their food in the ear of their house, that's disrespectful to the food and can bring poverty. People say, Tala silta tala mazaini. Somebody hangs up his basket of bread, is hanging up his income, is losing it. But that's only true in regards to bread. Aval bisra, the kivri, but if you're hanging your fish or your meat, less than there's no problem. Orchehi, because that's the normal way of doing it. Pa'ari basic kashlin yusa. Also, if somebody has chaff, a bran in a house, it's bad for it brings about poverty. So this is unclear as to whether this means just having it in the house, or if they would sometimes use that because their houses were earth, so they would sometimes put chaff and the waste of food down on the floor as a form of a lining on the floor. So that would be a waste. That's disrespectful to the food, and therefore it's going to bring poverty. Also, if somebody spreads crumbs on the floor, that's also disrespectful to food and causes poverty. Obviously, if there are crumbs that you can't pick up and they couldn't sweep because their floors were made of dirt, so that would be one thing. But if you have actually pieces of food on the floor, and it comes up a lot in the Gemara, it is important to show respect to food in the sense of the idea of that this is the nourishment that Hashem gives us, and that it's something that is a lack for so many people, and that it's a blessing that we have it, and not to take it lightly. So if we see food on the floor, it is halachically obligated to pick them up. Of all the things that we've read today, which most of them are not brought in halacha, this is one that is the idea of not having food on the floor, and if there is, to pick it up and not to pass by it. Belele Shabbos is a belei revius sharm ezikin alve. So if you have crumbs, food on the floor, Friday night and Wednesday night, mazikin are going to be, these damagers are going to be upon it. Now, Isra de Mazaini, the spirit of food, Nakid Shemay. That's its name is cleanliness. Isra de Aniyusa, and the name of the spirit of poverty is Naval Shemay, is dirty and disrespect is its name. So you want to connect with cleanliness and not with dirty. If you put earthenware on the opening of a barrel, kashal on a yusa, that also can bring poverty. Bitzi, somebody drinks water out of a bowl. So then kasha liv, that's dangerous to the clarity of the eyes. Tomorrow we'll continue with some of the other dangers over here in the Gemara. Wishing you a great day, great Shabbos, and we will continue after Shabbos.
Good Shabbos. Just be careful out there.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Be respectful. Be respectful of the blessings we have, and connect with Hashem, and then you get.
Exactly. Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.